Hello and welcome back to Soul Blazer. This is BioEnchanted, and today we'll be continuing with the next dungeon. So let's first of all head to our weave our way to the area where we got to last time. Because now we have the mole in our party, which means that we can see in the dark no more effectively now. So let's just quickly waltz back to where we were, just reminding myself of the layout, because it's been a few weeks since I recorded last. I was mostly kind of putting off till I'd beaten the second boss again on the practice run, which I've now done, and worked out a decent enough strategy for dealing with him, so... but we'll see that when we see it in a few videos' time. For now, let's continue with the actual dungeon, shall we? Now that we're actually at that point. And hopefully the rest of the game won't have nearly as much of a roadblock, because the rest of the situations after this one, for the most part, are more straightforward. There are a few kind of BS moments, but for the most part, it's relatively kind after this level. So here we have this little ring of light that's now illuminating more of the area. Right now it's not really making much of a difference, but I think we'll see what it actually ends up doing later in the area. So I'll point out when we get there. For now let's just finish clearing this out. And now this. These plants, which I hate so much. These are the most annoying things in this dungeon. Just the fact that they can't be hit while the vines are out makes them just really annoying to actually hit. But yeah, now we've released Crocodile. Isn't that cute? And of course more of these plants. One aspect of this dungeon I quite like is that for the most parts, a few of these shrines that we're in, like this one I believe is the water shrine. Well, more of it anyway. These shrines tend to have a few unique enemies that add a little bit of extra personality to them, and I quite like that. That's going to be very useful. Remember what that one squirrel wanted? That wanted to give us a sword, but wouldn't. Find a good vantage point. Not there. Oh dear. There we go. Always be slightly to the left of these kind of enemies, because that way the sword will hit them before they hit you, because of the way enemies can't move on the diagonal, which is really kind. Strange bottles I find kind of pointless, because I'm not planning on actually dying in a way that keeps it, because the way dying is really annoying. And this is what the light thing's actually for. One of these statues is slightly darker than the others, which you can only see with the light out. And of course, touching it makes it move around, which means you can now kill it. Those are kind of interesting enemies. I don't mind them. They're an interesting gimmick. And the fact that you can tell them apart with the little mole light is a nice little feature as well. That makes it less frustrating and boring to get through these rooms. It's a neat gimmick, and I'm okay with it. Of course, there's another one in here, hence the fact that that thing hasn't gone away yet. There we are. I quite like the design of the statues and everything, and the weird panels between them as well. It gives this room a very unique look, or this floor anyway, and also it's actually foreshadowing. But we'll see that later. Just keep the gimmick of the enemies in mind. Here I'm just going to be a bit cheeky, because it's always fun to be a little bit cheeky. Just let the enemies stack up when it's these simple guys, and blast them. It's cheeky, but it's a fun way of dealing with those kind of guys. It's satisfying. Although you miss out on the gems. Speaking of, though, that was a nice first Not reversal of fortune. I'm bad at words today, I don't know why. I guess counter to me using the magic the way I did would be a way of putting it. I'm just like, I've lost the word right now, it's just gone for me for no reason. But yeah, here's actually, we heard mentioned before from the town that that's actually a stage. Now we've got some of the Woodscene trio back, in that deer, and of course all animals, because all the enemies, all the characters while in this village are animals. And there's a shortcut, which is nice. We're actually going to be assembling the Woodscene trio, which is always quite fun to do in these kind of games. I always quite like assembling a particular landmark in a village. So here we are back outside and finally done with the water shrine. So we're back on the swamp area, which is less interesting, but it has some new gimmicks to it for this part of the swamp. This video is actually quite a bit longer, partially because this has more roadblocks in this dungeon than a lot of the dungeons do. So as a result, this one's kind of a double roadblock episode where we get past two at once. So it's got two sets of dungeon and township. Yeah, those flowers are kind of annoying because they release a little yellow fly. And now we have to deal with these green things again. In a really annoying position. And I'm doing very badly avoiding those green things, the lizards. Partially because I'm quite rusty at this game as of this recording. It's been a month after all. There we are. And here's our second shrine, which we'll do in a minute, won't be long. Just want to clear these guys out for now. Which turns out to be a bit of a mistake, but we'll see that. Because we'll run low on gems doing this. I should have waited till I got up there. I admit that. Hubris. So I quite like the structure of this dungeon. It's very unique to the other ones, because a lot of the dungeons have a very specific kind of structure to them, where it's like you go to a particular set of areas, and then you go for a whole new set of areas for the next one, like happened in the first dungeon with the castle and the painted world. In this case, it's all one area. It's just an area that's segmented into the temples that add a bit of variety to it, which keeps it fairly interesting in its own way. And the game kind of alternates a little bit between that. And here's those plant things I was trying to kill earlier when I first showed up in this level, but they were constantly moving out of reach. But now we're on the right side of the wall, so we can take care of them. And there we go. And there's a little shortcut, which is very nice to have. It's always good to unlock those blue warp points. Although some of them are in really stupid places, and this was a mistake. As you can see, we're very low on gems now. But here we have a new enemy type, these scorpions. These were of course metal enemies, so we can't hurt them. And yeah, here's why I really messed up. I should have just used my sword on these guys. But I wanted to spell them to death. And I wasted so much magic doing this. Generally, magic is something you have to be very careful with in this game, and use wisely. And I failed to do that. So so it's always good to get an extra herb. One thing I quite like is that even if you grab a medical herb from a chest in a dungeon and you already have one, instead of just wasting the herb, it actually automatically heals you to full. So basically, it uses it when you pick it up. And weirdly, Fireball is still effective against the fire enemies. Don't ask. Yeah, now pretty much out of magic, so let's just go up and slash them. These lizards are kind of a pain, and we'll see why in a minute. And these ghosts can be kind of annoying as well, because of the way they move. Although for the most part the ghosts are fairly easy, it's just sometimes they can be in a position where it's kind of tricky to get a good beat on them, and they have a lot of health. So it's mostly the fact that they have a lot of health that makes them so dangerous. I quite like that while at first it's fairly unassuming with animals just kind of showing up, we're actually seeing more structure to the town now that we're actually unlocking some of the infrastructure of the town, like the actual, like, that little restaurant type area on the stage. They're still animals, so of course they still live outside, but they also have other things that go on outside of that. Now this maze area is kind of annoying because there's a lot of enemies that spawn, and a lot of these little unkillable metal enemies as well, which is a real pain to deal with. And there's just so many monster lairs in this tight little area. There's 6 of them in all, one of which of course we can't do anything about because it's a scorpion monster lair. But this is what these guys are mostly like, these white faces, the ghosts. They kind of, and also they're actually the Moon Tribe from Illusion of Gaia, which is kind of a neat little callback Illusion of Gaia eventually has to this game. But also, they always kind of appear on the map and start spawning on the map already, and just kind of converge on you when you get in range of them. Which makes them a unique enemy, and I kind of like the way they structure themselves very differently to the other enemies which spawn in by the dungeons. And this is where they just get annoying, they start disappearing and reappearing, and because, as a result you get massive invincibility frames, so you can often end up overlapping with them, not being able to hurt them because of it. And it's just a real nightmare to deal with these sometimes. I kind of hate this enemy type from this area onwards. This kind of stuff happens, and it's really irritating. Overall, I don't really like this particular room. Happily though, the exit from the room when you don't have to actually do anything in it is basically right at the entrance, so we just need to go back there when we finish clearing this house of the remaining 2 monster shrines that we can do anything about right now. Technically 1, but you'll see why. Yeah, we kind of have to be careful here because these guys, if they overlap, they can do a lot of damage. And yeah, this is one we can't actually reach quite yet. Here I'm just trying to get to a decent like position where I can hit them without being hit back. I think I finally found it here. I just need to be careful with the scorpions. So yeah, only 1 more left to take care of that we can actually do something about. So let's go grab it, shall we? And these lizards again, and scorpions, it's just a huge hassle. I really don't like this room, it's just really irritating. Because there's not much room to maneuver, which is the main problem. Because a lot of this game, maneuverability is key. And here you really have to predict where everything's going to come from and know where you can move and how quickly you can go. And it's just kind of, you have to kind of memorize the paths a little bit as well that the scorpions go on, and it's just kind of a nightmare. It's almost like a Pac-Man maze, actually. I think it's actually maybe an intentional thing. It might be designed a bit like a Pac-Man maze with the guys being the scorpions being the ghosts. But even then, I'm not entirely certain if that's what they're going for there. Here, these fire guys can be more of a problem because they can do the fireball thing you're seeing right here, which means they actually have a ranged attack, they just didn't do it before because they didn't get them chance. And of course, this room has a lot of fire around, so we have to be kind of careful here. We have to time our way past the fire because the bridges kind of catch on fire, and then they fizzle out. Then we can cross safely. Yeah, that level up was really fortuitous. That could have been bad because I've run out of herbs here. The second member of the Woodston Trio. Score. I quite like that kind of world building as well, where you get to meet like those kind of characters. Like I quite like the different areas have their own culture. Like this area has its musicians in the trio and stuff like that, and other areas have other aspects of culture to them as well. Here, of course, you have to be careful on the bridge and use these stone platforms to get across it safely. It's a simple gimmick, but it's also kind of the last time it really appears like this, because the game is about to give us an obstacle to overcome relating to these. And this is really annoying. The bridge didn't fizzle out nearly fast enough, right? There. And here's a good place to stand. Yeah, that blue fairy may seem kind of useless, but we have a lot of stuff we can do right now by going back to town. So let's quickly trek back to town, once we've used this last bit of the bridge. And we will basically power ourselves up for the rest of the dungeon by going back to town and see what prizes we can unlock now that we have all the items. First, I'm just making a point that go ahead, we just have a bunch of bridges, which don't really have any of the stone platforms to hide behind. We can't really do much else from here. Of course, the bridges will do step damage while they're on fire. Now, the fire thing really annoys me, but we'll see why that is in the third level. So yeah, here we actually have light arrow from her, which is way better than the fire arrow because the light arrow hits in all 4 directions at once, which means we basically never have to worry about aiming again. I mean, it costs double the magic, but it's also, like, really potent. So you can hit in all directions, so it's worth the trade-off. And of course, here we finally have our sword upgrade. The Psycho Sword. Not quite the sword we were promised that would kill metal enemies, but it will at least paralyze them. Which will be very useful. So now whenever we hit metal enemies, it will freeze them in their tracks temporarily. So let's talk to a few of these new characters now, shall we? I quite like that the music cuts out for that gag. That's a cute little atmosphere building kind of a aspect of the joke that's completely unnecessary, but it's nice that it's there. I always quite like when games do that and just like completely sell their jokes. I like these dogs as well. They're just the dogs have so much character to them. Like the one that gives you the tour in the first video I did of this area. It's just like talking about how he likes walking people as much as they like walking him. That's just a really cute thing. And yeah, we actually have some armor north of here that we can almost get as well. Here, let's meet some of the Woodston Trio. I like the theatre, it's a really nice area. As is the restaurant, and just generally this area is much less bland now that we actually have the objects that are here, and like the gravestones as well are now appearing as well from one of the upgrades we got in Dungeon 2, so the area was feeling less like a field and more like an actual town run by animals. This sleepy stump is very vital. Let's get in his dream, shall we? This one's one of the cues to dreams, but first, let's just make a path. I quite like that idea that the tree stopped dreaming he was a bird. Especially given it actually adds to the whole atmosphere of this area with the birds telling the tree stumps what they see on their travels. It really kind of adds to that aspect of the area. Like, generally this game does that very well when it comes to characterization of the NPCs. And now we can crossfire without damage and have more physical defense as well as physical attack from the Psycho Sword. So now we are way more powerful, and the enemies that were giving us trouble will give us a lot less trouble. And we can now just walk straight across those fire bridges. Let's see what the scroll has to say. Learning a lot about Turbo, who stood up to the Dark Lord, and then, well, Dark Lord, who stood up to, forgotten what this game calls him now, the death of everything kind of guy, the main villain, and was killed by him. As we found out pretty much when we first arrived. I quite like that the alligator bridges basically make you ask permission first. That's adorable. It's west, mate. At least that's the obvious one. Here I'm just remembering to do something kind of vital, which is herbs. Need herbs. This area doesn't give you any herbs. So let's move to the first area again to grab a herb, shall we? Now something that's important to remember with this game. Sometimes early in an area you'll need to go back to previous areas because all the tools are now there for you to actually do stuff with. So let's use the tools and grab our herb before we dive back into the dungeon for the next stage of our journey. Now that we are fully equipped. With a level 2 sword, armor and spell, all in one video. Very, nicely timed, that. Very fortuitous. Again, there's a word I'm thinking of, but I can't quite reach, and that's really frustrating. Yeah, I kind of almost forgot. I can warp there now. That's better. Now let's use our newfound power to just wreck everything. And not walk right through that fireball a million times again like an idiot. Yeah, I kind of gave up on him. Let's finally go further down in this area and actually make use of these fire bridges now that we can walk along them without any real problems. But it's good to be able to just ignore certain obstacles when you get the ability to ignore them, because having to traverse them every time would be annoying. Here's kind of a trick to this sequence, just go left to right. Temporarily forget that, but that's kind of the trick here, just go left to right. But yeah, these guys are still annoying because of the whole disappearing and reappearing shtick. It's just a really irritating gimmick that I don't like whenever games do that. It just makes those enemies really frustrating to fight because just half your attacks miss for no reason, and it's just not fun to do. Then again, with the amount of enemy types this game has, it is kind of inevitable that they'll have some that just aren't much fun to fight. And yeah, here's kind of an interesting trick here, because the first one we could have made it, but now we would not be able to make it past these bridges from the second one onwards without getting hurt by them, because it's a really long bridge now. And if we tried to go up that third one without the armor, we still would have reached it and had to walk back, so we just would have had more of a chance of getting baked in the bridge. Yeah, this is why these guys are annoying and why this sword is not particularly useful when it comes to anything. Because certainly it stuns the enemies, but not for long, and they still do damage to you. It's just such an annoying hassle to deal with enemies that are like this. I really dislike those kind of enemies, but we'll be dealing with them for too much longer. I mean, still quite long, but yeah. But yeah, these are really nice spells to have, because now we don't need to worry about which direction we're facing when we fire it. We can just press the button and the enemies will just die. It's not much more powerful than the fire spell, but the versatility really helps. And so the fireball spell will basically never be seen again. It's cute, but it's just not worth it right now. Here I just kind of get careless, because of course I do. Even these fire guys, everything's dying in like 2 hits right now. This sword is really powerful, which is very nice to have. It's just its secondary ability just isn't much use. You may have also noticed that the sword has a level requirement, level 5. It's not a level 5 sword, it's that you need to be level 5 to wield it effectively. If you equip a sword that's at a higher level than you are, then you just won't be able to swing it. The character will just not respond when you press the button. You can still equip it, your attack button will just not do anything anymore. From my own observations, I may be incorrect on that. That may have just been because I was trying to use it in a town, but I think it's also the case in dungeons too. Generally just don't try and use a weapon that's outclasses you. We're actually really close to the second roadblock of this video as well, which is why this video, this section of the dungeon is relatively short compared to the first section, which was like 20 minutes, while this one's only 8 or so. Because we'll reach another roadblock fairly soon, and that will be the actual final third of the dungeon where we'll stop off there. Because it feels more natural, because this is the second of the 3 of the actual mini dungeons within the big dungeon, and so of course when we leave off it will be on the way to the final one of them, which I'm sure you remember will be the Shrine of Light. But for now, let's finish off the Fire Shrine now, just by going north here. And yeah, we can't go much further though. Yeah, Greenwood only. It's a very exclusive party over here. Which is not surprising given the whole villain destroying the whole world situation. You can kind of expect a lot of places to get a little bit xenophobic fairly quickly with that kind of shit happening. The only thing is, I've kind of forgotten what this game actually calls its villain, because while I know it's technically Dark Gaia, it's just a different translation. It just kind of bugs me that I can't remember what the other translation was. Something I'll have to look up in a bit. I didn't realise I'd actually forgotten it. I quite like this squirrel. He just kind of follows you around for no reason. It's just kind of, it's a cute little thing. You can't get rid of it, you can't stop it until you area transition. It's just a cute thing. So let's just move on, shall we? Let the squirrel do his thing. Yeah, we've seen those around actually. I like that mole, he's cool. He's good and strong and my friend. I quite like that you can't see him as well, so it really is kind of a little surprise. Because he's behind the wall. It's overall just a cute little thing. The problem is it happens every time we go across that. Or through that tunnel, rather. And yeah, we can't help him cross the river quite yet, so that's something that's outside of our purview. That will be, like, a thing to return to, like the metal enemies in the first dungeon, and this one. So let's see what's in the bird stream. Death Toll, that was his name. So now we've actually opened the way to this little area in the real world, and this area, of course, is where Turbo died. Or where he was buried, rather. So, of course, those dog bones are his. So now we've opened the way. Let's go find it, shall we? So, of course, they buried them with Turbo as a kind of sign of respect. Of course, here I forget which of the holes to go into. Because, again, idiot. But there they are. And that's something I really do like with this, that while it's very kind of... It does a very good job of having the deaths be very bittersweet, because while Turbo technically isn't around anymore, he's still helping us in some way. And that's really cool. And now we have the leaves, so next time we'll go back into the dungeon, go to the final shrine by that raft, and finally finish off this dungeon. The boss may well end up being a separate video, probably spliced into the next one, but we'll see. I'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.